Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad that you could join me for a short teaching this afternoon. And we're going to be talking about cherubim from our series, Angels and Demons, and everything in between. So we'll be looking at that. Now, my friends, yeah, if you could help me out a little bit, here's your schedule. Sunday, we're here at 8 a.m. Tuesday, here at 6 p.m. on second and fourth Tuesdays for prayer. Wednesday at 2 p.m. for devotions, and of course Friday at 2 p.m. for a short teaching. All these times are Mountain Standard, and if you're on Facebook, please give me a like and a share. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. And also, if YouTube or on Facebook, if you could comment, I would surely appreciate that. All right, and one more thing, go over to my website, edthepastor.com, and you can see right there. I do a lot of things for churches and pastors as far as my teaching ministry goes. I'd love to be able to help out you and your pastor. So give me a shout out and see if I can't do something for your church. All right, as I said, this is from our series, Angels and Demons, a study of supernatural beings. And today we are going to be looking at cherubim, which I found out cherubim is both singular and plural. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the most extensive passage on the cherubim, and let's take a look here. It's found in Ezekiel chapter 1, verses 4 through 12. It says, "A great cloud with fire flashing forth continually, and a bright light around it. And in its midst was something like glowing metal in the midst of the fire. Within it there were figures resembling four living beings, and these were in their appearance. They had human form. Each of them had four faces and four wings. Their legs were straight, and their feet were like calves' hooves, and they gleamed. A great cloud of fire flashing continually." Oh, excuse me, I almost went to the same one here. Like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on their four sides, were human heads, and the faces on their wings, and four of them, their wings touched one another. Their faces did not turn when they moved, but they went straight forward, and they went straight forward in the form of their faces. Each had a face of a man. All had the face of a lion on the right and a face of the bull on the left. And all four had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. Their wings were spread out above. Each had two touching each other and two covering their bodies. With each went straight forward. Wherever the Spirit was about to go, they would go without turning as they went. All right, so we see here. Let's take a look at this. Kind of the physical description of this, and we see it in there. It is they are described as four living beings. Not visionary, not automatons or statues or anything else like that, but they resembled human, and each one of them had four faces. We'll look at those in a second. Four wings. They had straight legs, which kind of suggests that they didn't have knees, and they had calves' feet. And so this is rather odd. It's not what we think of when we think about angels, is it? Now, we take a look here. Here is part of the description. Here's part of the description that they had there. It says that they all had human hands and the faces. Now, I've added on here on the description, maybe this is what it means, maybe not, but this is kind of conventional wisdom here. It said the faces, well, they had a man, a lion, a bull, and an eagle. And we know that man is the ruler of all the creatures. The lion is the king of the wild beast. The bull, king of the tame beast, and of course the eagle is the king of the birds. Now, whether or not this is actually what they mean. Now, remember, as we read this, almost everything that we're seeing here has some symbolic meaning, and if we take a look at it, it would mean more. It would mean more to the Jew living in that century than it does to us. And many of the writings, which would probably help us out, have been lost to the sands of time. And so sometimes we have to do what our best guess is. Now, when we go along in the description, this is they had wheels. It's like they were mounted on segways there or something. Eyes everywhere, and coming from them and about them would be fire and lightning. And so, as we look at these are the four. These will be called cherubim. And here's where Ezekiel names them in Ezekiel chapter 10. He says, "When the cherubim stood still, the wheels would stand still, and when they rose up, the wheels would rise with them, for the spirit of the living being was in them." So remember, they have spirit in them. They are spirit creatures. And we see here that, I said they are, well, we're going to try to figure out exactly what the role of a cherubim is. Now, if we look at the name, the best guess on what the name means is blessing. It's one of the things, being that Hebrew is does not have vowels in it, that the best they can figure by inserting different vowels in the pronunciation of it is that it probably means blessing. Now, the first mention, and this is important as we interpret the Bible, is where is it first mentioned and what does it say? And it is first mentioned in Genesis chapter 3, after Adam and Eve had sinned. And God said, we can't allow them to eat of the tree of life after eating of the tree of knowledge. And so he drove the man out. And at the east of the Garden of Eden, he stationed a cherubim and the flaming sword, which turned every direction to guard the way to the tree of life. And so when we take a look, part of what we see, the job of the cherubim is to be God's representative here on earth. Now, they're quite similar to seraphim in their looks, but we'll discover what is different about them as we go along. Now, the cherubim had great symbolism throughout the Old Testament. It says in the tabernacle, it says, "You shall make 2 cherubim of gold, make them of hammered work at the ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub at one end and 1 cherub at the other end, and they shall make the cherubim of one piece, with the mercy seat at its 2 ends, and the cherubim shall have their wings spread upwards, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and they will face one another, and the faces of the cherubim will be turned towards the mercy seat." All right, so Moses was commanded to, as he was making the Ark of the Covenant, to put a cherubim, on the lid of the Ark of the Covenant. And they were, like I said, the wings, 2 of their wings would be spread. It would be spread forward or pointing forward, and they would touch over the top of where the mercy seat. That's where the blood of the sacrifice would be. And notice they are looking down at the mercy seat, and there's reason for that. Because if we remember the seraphim, they were before the throne of God, and with 2 wings they would fly, and with 2 wings they would cover their feet. And with 2 wings they would cover their eyes, not to look upon the Lord of hosts. And so we see here the cherubim as they are crafted on the Ark of the Covenant. They are not looking up towards God. Now we find in Samuel chapter 4. This verse is it says, "So the people sent to Shiloh, and from there they carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of the hosts, who sits above the cherubim. And the 2 sons of Eli, they were there with the Ark of the Covenant of God." So we see there, God is seen to be enthroned or to sit above the cherubim that's on the mercy that are on the mercy seat. And so as we see there, like I said, the blood offering, the blood would be applied to the mercy seat there every year. And think about it, God is seen as a king. His throne is above the cherubim. And what would be then, if the throne is above there, is we would see that the mercy seat where the offering would be placed, that would represent, well, the footstool of God. This is where God, if we're going to anthropomorphize God, then his feet would be on the mercy seat. So just as we would envision someone offering something to a king, what would they do? They would come before him and they would set it at his feet. And so this is what this represents, and we see there is the symbolism of the throne. Now, There's more symbolism that is found that'll help us understand about the mercy seat, or about the cherubim, excuse me. It says the other cherub, and this is in the building of the temple when Solomon was. He says the other cherub was 10 cubits. Both of the cherubim were of the same measure and of the same form. He placed the cherubim in the midst of the inner house, and the wings of the cherubim were spread out, so that the wings of one touched one wall, and the wing of the other touched the other wall. So their wings were touching each other in the center of the house. What this represents, we're creating the holies of holies within the temple, is what Solomon is doing. And remember, David was given careful instructions and plans on how to build the temple, just as Moses was given careful instructions on how to build the tabernacle and the tent of meeting, and all the implements that would go in this. And so, what did Solomon do? Well, he created at the holies of holies. There was 2 cherubim that were created. This is 10 cubits. These were huge. They had one wing touching one wall, and the other one had a wing touching the other wall, and their wings touched each other above the entryway. And what we see here in this symbolism is what is seen in heaven. Remember what we see in heaven. How many seraphim are before the throne? Well, we know that there are 4 seraphim. And we know that from the 4 living creatures that they surround the throne. And so we see here there are 2 cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant, and there are 2 cherubim over the doorway that leads to the Ark of the Covenant. And so now we find 4 cherubim as represented here on earth, just as there are 4 seraphim, which are located in heaven itself. So what we see here is the symbolism on the earth about what is in heaven. Just as Jesus would teach his disciples to pray, that your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. Well, there was the same idea for creating the temple and the tabernacle. Now we're going to have a scene from the temple here, and it says we're in the book of Ezekiel again. Let me go ahead and make that big one here. It says, then the glory of the Lord of Israel went up from the cherub, and on it, which it had been, to the threshold of the temple. And he called on the man in linen, whose loins was the writing case. And this is a representation of Jesus Christ, the man in white linen. And I continue on here. And so we see Ezekiel 10:3. Now the cherubim were standing on the right side of the temple when the man entered, and the cloud filled the inner court. So as a Christophany, as Jesus enters into there, we see that what comes with him, the cloud fills the inner courts. The glory of the Lord, ushered in by Jesus into the temple. But then something happens. It says, then the cherubim departed. They lifted their wings and rose up from the earth in the sight with the wheels beside them, and they stood still at the entrance of the east gate of the Lord's house, and the glory of Israel, and the glory of the God of Israel hovered over them. And so what we see there is that as the cherubim departed, they took the glory of God with them. And so we see there the cherubim are taking God's presence away from the temple. This was right before the temple would fall for Jerusalem would fall to the Babylonians, when God would punish his people, and it is represented as the cherubim show a representation of that by taking the Shekinah of the Lord with him as they go. And so as we look here, some of the conclusions that we can draw: cherubim are only seen on the earth. They mirror what is seen in heaven. But seraphim are in heaven. Cherubim are only, so far, have only been seen on the earth. Notice they guarded Eden. Now, the story of the Bible is of fellowship found or created and fellowship lost. So in the garden, there was perfect fellowship with God, and then it was broken. And so what happens now? Eden becomes a representation of the temple of God and of the tabernacle of God. and it is guarded by the cherubim. God wants to have fellowship, and so what do we see? We see the temple, we see the tabernacle, and once again, we see two cherubim who are guarding it, and so the way into the fellowship with God is through a sacrifice, and the cherubim guard that, and we see it again in the temple. The temple is a representation of heaven, and which here on earth, that is Eden. Just as there's so much about that, and that would be a study all in itself about this, about how the temple, how Eden, the temple, and heaven are reflections, are kind of images of each other. And so we see the symbol. They are symbolic on the Ark of the Covenant. They are there. They are there to as God's attendants. God doesn't really need guards, but they are there on the Ark of the Covenant. They represent the bearers or the protectors of God's feet. God is enthroned above the cherubim, and as He is there, they are at His feet, and it's not to guard God, but it's to keep man away from God, and they are carriers of God's Shekinah, of the glory of the Lord, which would depart in that one scene before the Babylonians would come and lay waste to Jerusalem. All right, well, that was a little bit of a longer of a teaching than we usually have on Fridays, but this one was a little bit complicated. Had to go through. Now, my friends, be sure to join me on Sunday morning, and I hope that you have a blessed weekend. Let me pray for you, and let me bless you. Father, thank you for my friends. Lord, would you bless them and would you keep them? Lord, help them to grow in wisdom and in knowledge, Lord, in favor with you. Lord, keep your hand upon them, Lord, and may you guard them and guard their hearts. My friends, I bless you in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. God bless.